you did thus and such and I didn't do it, I'd say, no, I didn't. I don't think that we're offering it as a statement for the truth of the matter asserted, because we recognize that Nathaniel Clanton was not a witness to the actual homicide in this case. It was simply an accusation from Nathaniel Clanton. And then the question is for the jury, well, what kind of a response is that for a person to simply walk away instead of saying, no, I didn't do it? But it's not hearsay because there's no real factual assertion. It's not being offered for the truth of the matter. Well, I understand there is an assertion in the sense that Nathaniel Clanton is making the statement, you killed your wife. That's Nathaniel Clanton's accusation based upon all that he's seen or heard so far, but he was not a witness to the case. And then the question is, how did Mr. Jensen respond to that? And instead
let me ask you a question. If Nathaniel Clanton came into my court, as he has, and said, you are a thief, you're a liar, and you're a crook, and I just ignore him rather than get into an argument with him, am I admitting anything?
Nope. And I don't think that any reasonable juror would look at that and think that you were.
No, I don't think this is, I understand what you're saying, and I think that this is too dangerous for admission.
Okay.
So that would have to be...
Well, Your Honor, I'll need to talk with Nathaniel Clanton then before the jury's allowed to view him, because he won't know that he's not supposed to say that. So,
would you ask Mr. Clanton to come in, please?
Nathaniel Clanton back there right now?
Do you want to see him in private?
Well, I need to talk to him, so
Either way, I don't care.
okay. Why don't you and Mr. Elby talk about the prior convictions and whatever you come up with as far as convictions. Mr. Clanton, Ms. Gabrielle and I and the defense counsel have gone through your prior criminal history, and we've come up, it appears that there are 10 previous criminal convictions. Would you agree with that number?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're asked the following question, have you ever been convicted of a crime, you would understand the answer to be yes, and if you're asked how many times, you would understand the answer to be 10?
Yes.
Okay. Then we're ready to go, Your Honor.
All right. Would you ask the jury to come in, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, sir, will you please state your name and spell your last name?
Nathaniel Clanton, C-L-A-N-T-O-N.
And Mr. Clanton, are you presently an inmate in a correctional facility?
Yes.
Is that a state or a federal correctional facility?
Federal.
And have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
How many times?
10.
And what are you serving time for right now, sir?
Excuse me, I'm not earning my keep. I forgot to swear the witness, and fortunately one of the officers got good judgment.
I appreciate the officer's diligence, Your Honor.
Would you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, officer.
Everything you just got done saying is the truth also, right?
Well, I appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah, start over.
Okay. For the record, please state your name and spell your last name.
Nathaniel Clanton, C-L-A-N-T-O-N.
And you're presently an inmate in a federal correctional facility?
Yes.
What are you serving time for right now?
Crack cocaine.
Possession or possession with intent to deliver, or delivery what was
Delivery.
it? Delivery of crack cocaine?
Yes.
So you're present, and how much time do you have left to serve in your prison term?
12 years.
And so you've been convicted of crimes in the past?
Yes.
How many times? How many
10.
crimes, I should say?
10.
Have you been offered anything in exchange for your testimony in this case?
No.
Have I talked to you about providing you anything in exchange for your testimony in this case?
No.
Have you gotten any time off your prison term?
No.
Have you been offered any time off your prison term?
No.
Do I have any authority to provide you any time off your prison term?
No.
How is it that, well, do you know a person named Mark Jensen?
Yes.
Could you point to Mark Jensen if you see him anywhere in this courtroom and describe what he's wearing?
Yes.
Okay, point to him, describe what he's wearing.
He's wearing a suit.
Okay, there's a table to the left of me, and there's 3 people at that table. Where is he sitting at that table?
In the middle.
Okay, Your Honor, request
Getting the accused.
Thank you. Tell the jury the circumstances under which you first came to see or know of Mark Jensen.
I met Mark Jensen in Kenosha County Jail. I've been in Kenosha County Jail almost 6 months. I was in J Block with him, and I was there for like a month and a half with him.
Okay, who was in J Block first, you or him?
Mark, Mr. Jensen.
So when you first came to J Block, Mr. Jensen was already there.
Yes.
When you first got to J Block, did you know who Mr. Jensen was?
No.
And once you were in J Block, did you have occasion to speak with him at all?
Time to time, not frequently.
At the time that you were in J Block with Mr. Jensen, was there a time that Mr. David Thompson came into J Block?
Like a month later, after me.
So you'd been in J Block with Mr. Jensen for almost a month before Mr. Thompson got there?
Yes.
Now, in the month before Mr. Thompson got there, how often would you speak with Mr. Jensen?
Rarely, not that much.
Were you able to observe Mr. Jensen and his interactions with other inmates in the facility?
Yes, everybody, pretty much. Be aware of my surroundings.
Okay, and did you observe whether or not Mr. Jensen spoke with other inmates in the facility, in J Block?
Yes.
Describe whatever interaction you saw between Mr. Jensen and other inmates in the cell block.
He pretty much, talk about his case with certain individuals, show him his court reports and things like that.
Did he ever try to talk to you about his case or show you his court reports?
No, I wouldn't want to look at him.
Well, when you say you don't want to look at it, you didn't want to look at it.
I wasn't interested. No.
So he tried to show them to you?
No, not offhand, no.
He never did? Okay.
No.
Tell us what happened when David Thompson came into J Block.
Him and Mr. Thompson and Mr. Jensen was, started getting along for what apparent reason, I don't know. They was talking, they started getting to know one another, filling each other out. And what I mean by that, they was knowing each other, They had their moments, I guess.
So you saw Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson talking with each other?
Yes.
And when you saw Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson talking with each other, did you see any other inmates involved in that conversation, or was it just Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thomas.
And did you ever involve yourself in those conversations between Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson?
No.
Did you hear what Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson were talking about?
Not really, no. They usually be off to they was off to themselves when they was communicating.
Did you ever come to learn from either Mr. Jensen or Mr. Thompson what Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson were talking about?
Later on.
Okay, who told you about it?
Jensen brought it to my attention first.
Okay, tell us about that conversation. Did that occur while Mr. Thompson was still there, or had Mr. Thompson left J Block?
I think he left J Block.
Okay, so tell us what happened after Mr. Thompson left J Block.
One day, me and another inmate was looking out the window talking, and Mr. Jensen came up, and he was asking me about his situation. That Thompson, I guess, had made an offer to him, and he had explained to me what it was, and I told him he was stupid for doing it.
Okay, what was the offer that Mr. Jensen described to you that Mr. Thompson had made to Mr. Jensen?
He can make one of his witnesses disappear.
So, and this is Mr. Jensen describing this to you?
Yes.
And did Mr. Jensen say anything more about it than that? Tell the jury, if you can, exactly what it was that Mr. Jensen said to you about this discussion.
Mr. Jensen was explaining to me that him and Mr. Thompson was talking about a particular witness that was on this case that lived in another county outside of Kenosha. And I guess, from my understanding, that the witness had testified against him and got his bond or something revoked from him to come back to jail. And I guess he was mad about that. And the way he was explaining, like he was a major factor in his case, because if the individual came the first time and testified on him, that he'll come again today or whatever and do the same thing. So I guess he was explaining that to Mr. Thompson. And Mr. Thompson brought an offer to him, was stating that, well, you give me his name and where he stayed, I'll make something happen. I'll make him disappear, whatever. And after that, he left. Mr. Thompson had left and went to Chicago to take care of his business. And Jensen came up and asked me about it, and I told him he was stupid if he do it. Because I didn't think that was cool of doing that. If you feel you got confidence that you can beat your case fair and square, why would you need somebody to take a witness out? To make.
And how did Mr. Jensen respond, if at all, to your advice?
Right. I hope he did.
Did you have any further conversation with Mr. Jensen at that point?
No.
Did you and Mr. Excuse me just a moment. Now, when Mr. Jensen was describing this, these previous discussions between himself and Mr. Thompson, did he give you the impression that he'd made up his mind one way or another as to what he was going to do?
Yeah, I think he did.
What was it? Was it your impression he made up his mind that he was going to do?
Yeah, he might have gone take up Mr. Thompson's offer. Because the way he made it seem like Thompson knew what he was doing, because I guess he told me he beat a couple cases before then. That was prior to the cases he was on now.
I object to the hearsay.
I'm not sure. Well, Your Honor, it's being offered to indicate that the defendant was seriously considering this, not...
Speaking
I'm going to
objection,
sustain
it's
the objection.
improper.
You go ahead and ask a question, and you can develop whatever.
Okay. Well, tell me,
inquiry.
Mr. Clanton, what was it about the statements that Mr. Jensen was making to you that caused you to believe that Mr. Jensen was seriously considering this offer that had been put to him by Mr. Thompson?
Because Mr. Thompson and Jensen was always together the couple weeks that he was there, and they was always together talking by themselves. There was never nobody around when he was talking.
And then after Mr. Thompson had left and Mr. Jensen was speaking to you, what was it about that conversation? What was it about the things that Mr. Jensen said in that conversation that caused you to believe that Mr. Jensen was seriously considering this offer from Mr. Thompson?
He was pretty much like he had second doubts about it, about his situation.
About the case or about the offer?
About his case.
Were there any further discussions that occurred between you and Mr. Jensen concerning Mr. Jensen's case after Mr. Thompson had left?
No.
Did you ever see Mr. Thompson intimidate or threaten Mr. Jensen?
No.
Did you have the impression that Mr. Jensen was afraid of Mr. Thompson or anybody else in the cell block?
No, not really. I don't think he should have been afraid of nobody. It didn't seem like it at the time. I don't know, but I'm not going to say.
Well, if you didn't see something,
I can't speak on it.
Yeah, Mr. Clanton, I'll just tell you, because in court, if you didn't see it or if you don't have firsthand knowledge, I'm not going to ask you about it.
All right.
So from your firsthand knowledge or from what you observed, you never saw any evidence that Mr. Jensen was being threatened or harassed or intimidated by Mr. Thompson or any other inmate in the J block?
No.
And you were there for about how long a period of time with Mr. Jensen?
Like a month and a half.
Now, during the period of time, did Mr. Jensen strike you as being very reluctant to share his case or share details of his case with other inmates?
Yes.
He was reluctant to do that, or he was willing to do that?
He was willing to do that.
Okay. And did you see him talking about his case with other inmates?
Yeah, numerous times.
Can you tell us some of the other inmates that you saw him talking to?
I don't know, like last names, but they had aliases they was using in there.
Okay, well, tell us the aliases if you know.
There's one name, it says we call him Bin Laden because of the way he looked, which is crazy, but he was sharing his information with him. You know, he'll break out with his paperwork and show him, and he'll read it, you know. then he'll talk about it, and I asked him a few questions about it. And then it was
You asked him a few questions about it. Bin Laden?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it was a couple more times that a couple other individuals, they just came in like weekend warriors. You know, they're there for the weekend and they go home. And he was showing them his information with him, his paperwork and everything with him. And that was it. And it's people that was coming in.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions, Mr. Clanton.
All right.
Cross-examine.
Mr. Clanton, you indicated that you're serving a federal sentence right now,
Yes, I am.
and that was, you were convicted on one count of distribution of crack cocaine, right?
Yes.
You were charged with another that was dismissed as part of your plea agreement, right?
Yes.
And they had evidence that you had distributed crack cocaine on a number of other occasions, right?
Yes.
You indicated that you have about, I think you said 12 years left on your sentence?
Yes.
Now, my information was that you had been sentenced to 212 months, and that was
17 years.
just about a year ago?
Yeah.
And how do you come up with the 12?
You do 85% of your time. And that's what the calculators come to 13 years.
With the time you've done and your
Right.
sentence credit and
Yes.
the good time, you figure you have 12 left?
Yes.
But you're hoping not to serve all 12, right?
If it's a new system, I mean, if it's hopefully something goes for this crack law thing, yeah, I'm hoping I can do it.
Well, you're also hoping that your testimony in this case will help you go below 12, right?
Yes.
Your lawyer, Mr. Lieberman here, he's here to help follow up on that, right?
Yes.
And you've also, why were you in the Kenosha County Jail?
Because I had some other federal affairs I had to take care of that pertains to my case.
Federal charges against you?
Yes. Yeah.
You had other federal charges?
No, sir. No, I ain't had no other federal charges against me. No.
You were in Kenosha so you could cooperate against other people, right?
Yes.
And because you know that you can go back to the judge and ask him for less time by cooperation, right?
Yes.
And you want to use that cooperation and the cooperation in this case to try to reduce your sentence, Mr. Clanton.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know that the only way that you can help yourself is by helping the prosecutor, right?
No.
Well, if you helped Mr. Jensen, I couldn't go to the judge and ask for less time. That wouldn't get you anything, would it?
No.
Right? You agree with that?
Yes. No.
Okay. You have 10 prior convictions.
Yes.
Your first conviction is for an armed robbery, is that right?
Yes.
And then you've had a number of battery cases.
Yes.
You had a case involving an Erica Jones, right?
Yes.
You broke in her door.
Yes.
You punched her in the nose, breaking her nose.
Yes.
Alice Jones said she was going to call the police, and you said you'd kill her if she called the police.
I don't recall that one.
During that same incident, after you broke the door and broke Erica Jones' nose, you don't recall telling Alice Jones that you'd kill her?
No.
Are you saying it didn't happen, or you just don't recall?
I just don't recall that part.
Was Alice Jones there?
Yeah, her mom was there.
And then Erica Jones' child was there as well, right?
Yeah, my son.
And he also was hurt in this incident, right?
Not that I know of, no.
Well, do you recall kicking a bassinet over and knocking your son to the ground, causing some bumps?
No,
Are you saying that didn't happen, or you just don't recall?
it didn't happen.
You remember being charged with that, though, right?
Yes, a battery.
And by the way, when you were sentenced to 212 months, it was by Judge Shabazz in Madison,
Yes,
and the prosecutor was only recommending 188 months, right?
yes,
And Judge Shabazz went over what the recommendation was, correct?
yes,
And that's something judges can do in the federal system, is they can go beyond what the prosecutor recommends, true?
yes,
And that's what happened to you, right?
yes,
And then there was a LaShawn Sheldon, remember her?
yes.
And you beat her too, right?
I beat her now.
Well, do you remember having an argument about what she was wearing?
Yes,
You said, if you want to dress like that, I'll treat you like one.
yes,
And you grabbed her by the shirt, right?
yes,
Took her in the bathroom,
yes,
grabbed her on the neck,
yes.
choked her.
No, I ain't joking.
While choking her, you said, I'll do anything I can to kill you.
No,
Tried to punch her in the right side of her neck.
no, no. I don't recall all that.
That was in your pre-sentence report in the federal case, wasn't it, Mr. Clanton?
I probably didn't read that part. Most of the things in my PSI I didn't even pay attention to.
Well, you were asked if there was any corrections you needed to make in that pre-sentence report, right?
Yes,
And you didn't have any corrections, true?
yes,
And you had indicated that you went through that with your lawyer, true?
yes,
Mr. Clanton, you said Mark Jensen talked about his case with other people, right?
yes.
And he showed him, for example, some police reports, right?
Police reports, some of his also some documents that to read, that pretty much you can read his file. He had his file in there.
He had like stacks of files in his cell, right?
Yes.
Lots and lots of papers.
Yeah, he had 2 bins full, yeah.
I mean, like a couple foot high stacks of papers, right?
No, there was 2 bins full.
Yeah, what's a bin?
Like a foot tall, foot high, rather.
Okay, so you had a couple feet of papers, right?
Yes,
And when he'd show people his papers, he'd say, basically, this is crazy, right?
explain his side, the side of the situation, yeah.
Right? And there's nothing wrong with telling people you didn't do something or explaining why the reports are messed up, right?
You're right, right?
Except that it's not very smart to do when you're in a jail, is it?
No, it's not smart.
And you know that if you talk about your case with people, that someone may use it against you, right?
Yes,
And when you say use it against you, they may take information they get and then twist it and add some lies and then use it against you, right?
yes,
You're aware of that kind of thing happening?
yes,
Happens quite a bit, doesn't it?
yes,
And you're also worried about having your papers taken and looked at even if you don't show them to people, right?
yeah, you're right, yeah.
Because if somebody reads those police reports and then they know the names of a couple of the witnesses against you, well, all they have to do is just add a couple of little lies to it and it looks like you're confessing to something you didn't do, right?
Right,
And I think another thing you've mentioned is that if you just kind of tick somebody off, they may use the information they got from you against you, right?
I guess.
I mean, like if you refuse to share your lunch with them or failed to share canteen with them, they may respond by saying, I'll stick you, right?
If you're intimidated by him, yeah, I guess.
Well, do you recall telling you had a recorded interview, right?
Yes,
Okay. And do you recall saying at that time, this is page 4, if you don't treat them right, meaning someone else who you've talked to or whatever, basically would be like canteen floating around and you ask for something and you say no, then they like, okay, you want this all to get out? And you pretended to write something down and then send it in? I mean, you were explaining that if you turn down somebody for canteen they're demanding, they may turn against you with the information they have, right?
Some can't. No, I can't agree with that one. So what you saying is that it's like I have a thing is you give people respect, you get respect back. Now, as far as somebody just like, okay, you don't give me no canteen when I ask for it, or you don't give me nothing off your tray, okay, I got something for you. That's stupid. That's seriously, that's stupid.
Well, I was just looking at what you had to say in your recorded interview.
Right. That's
do you
what I
remember-
meant by that.
So which one is that? What page number?
Page 4.
We don't have it. It's page 4.
I'm sorry, and do you recall saying that about the canteen and you've just changed your mind, or you think that I
No,
just
the canteen
misunderstood?
situation, yeah, misunderstood, because what I meant by that was, is, you treat people with respect, people will respect you. But
Okay.
as far as taking somebody, you offer somebody ask like, man, let me get a candy bar or something, and you tell me no, okay, no, it's no. But in some other people don't look at it like that though either.
There are some people who take no for canteen with, respond with a punch in the face or something.
That or probably like you say, write a note in or something.
No, so they may try to set you up for something if you don't give them canteen.
Yeah, they'll do that too.
But you think the greater danger would be that if you share your information with somebody, that they can use it against you to get themselves a deal?
Yes.
And so you thought that was pretty stupid of Mr. Jensen to let people look at his stuff?
Yes.
You indicated, Mr. Clanton, that you did not hear any conversation between Mr. Thompson and Mr. Jensen?
No. Yes, yes.
That's correct. Did you see Mr. Thompson shove or hit Mr. Jensen?
No.
I take it that could happen at some point without you seeing it?
Yes. When you ain't paying attention to it, or whatever situation occurred.
You came in on August 16th, is that right?
Yes.
And when you came in, did you right away hear about an altercation that had happened the day before in that J block?
No.
You didn't hear anything about two guys beating up Michael Clark?
No.
And you think Mr. Thompson was there for 2 weeks with
About
Mr.
2
Jensen?
weeks. Yeah, about 2 weeks.
In J block?
Yes.
And your understanding was that to get rid of a witness, Mr. Thompson's offer was $100,000?
Yes.
And Mr. Jensen never told you he accepted any offer, right?
Thinking about it. That's what he said. He was talking to me. He was on my side when he was talking to me. When he approached me about his situation. Because I was talking to another individual. We were just discussing other things. And he came approached me and was asking me about it.
Was that other individual there?
Yes.
Who's that?
His name Bernard Bush.
And
I'm sorry, what was the first name?
Bernard.
Bernard Bush? Okay.
And he simply told you that Mr. Thompson had approached him with an offer, right?
Yes.
And he hadn't done anything about it, right?
Not right then and there, no.
And it was $100,000?
Yes.
Now, do you recall what time of day Mr. Thompson came into the cell block?
It's like after lunch, like around about 1:30, 1:45, somewhere around there.
And then he left for a couple days soon thereafter to go to court in Chicago?
Yes.
And then he came back for a day?
No. He stayed a few more days, then he left again.
And then he didn't return to J Block?
No, he was in that block next to us.
And was it a few days before Mr. Thompson and Mr. Jensen talked, after Mr. Thompson arrived?
Probably a day later, like the next day. They
And was it after Mr.
communicating.
Thompson had been there for almost 2 weeks that you had this conversation with Mr. Jensen?
Excuse me?
Was it after Mr. Thompson had been there for a couple of weeks that you had this conversation with Mr. Jensen that you were telling us about?
Yes.
So after like 2 weeks' time of watching them, that's when Mr. Jensen told you this?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Clanton. That's all I have.
You said that when Mr. Clanton came back, he was in the next cell block over?
Me, Mr.
I'm
Thompson?
sorry, Mr. Thompson. You're Mr. Clanton, I'm sorry. When Mr. Thompson came back, he was in the next cell block over?
Yes.
And what separates the cell block that you were in from the cell block that Mr. Thompson was in?
Glass and wall.
So you were able to
So
see
the
you were able to see Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
And is there any way for inmates between the two cell blocks to communicate with each other?
Yes.
Describe the ways that you've seen inmates communicate with each other between those two cell blocks.
You can talk through a heater. It's like a heater that runs across the wall under the window.
A heater?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can talk down to it to hear and communicate or whatever, or you can write notes and put them on the wall, on the window and show them so they can read it.
So you've seen inmates do that?
Yes.
Tell me some of the inmates you've seen do that.
I seen Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson done it.
Okay, so you saw Mr. Jensen, Mr. Thompson communicate in which way? Either through the heater or by holding up notes on the cell?
Holding up notes.
Did you see what the notes were or what they were talking about with each other?
No, not a.
But you did see Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson communicating with each other by holding up notes to each other.
Yes.
Did you ever see or hear them try to communicate to each other by talking through this heater duct that you talked about?
No.
And over how long a period of time was it that you saw Mr. Jensen and Mr. Thompson communicating with each other through the two cell blocks?
About a week later.
Now, when you had this discussion with Mr. Jensen, or when Mr. Jensen started talking to you about this planned or proposed abduction of the witness against him,
Yes.
was Mr. Thompson still in the cell block, or had he left the cell block by that time?
He left the cell block.
Did Mr. Jensen ever relate to you how it was that Mr. Thompson proposed to accomplish this objective when Mr. Thompson was obviously going to be locked up for some lengthy period of time?
Objection, he didn't say he was proposing to achieve this objective.
Rephrase your question.
Did Mr. Jensen ever explain to you how this abduction was going to occur using Mr. Thompson if Mr. Thompson was going to be locked up?
Objection, he did not state that there was any abduction that was going to occur.
Again, I think you should rephrase your question.
Did Mr. Jensen ever explain to you how this plan was going to unfold if Mr. Thompson was locked up?
Again, I object. That was not this man's testimony.
Overruled.
That means you can answer the question, sir.
Okay, sorry.
Find I got one out that's okay.
All right. Apparently, if it would have took place, Thompson had some people out there that I guess he said he did, that was gonna go to Appleton. That was gonna pick the individual up, that was gonna take him to a house. They was gonna put him in the basement or something like that. And they was gonna keep him there until the court case was over with.
This is what Mr. Jensen told you?
Yes.
Did you ever discuss with Mr. Jensen the feasibility of just holding somebody in the basement of a house until the trial was over?
I told him it was the dumbest thing if he ever done it.
Thank you, Mr. Clanton. I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Albee?
And everything that Mr. Jensen was relating to you was Mr. Thompson's statements, right?
Right.
That was what Mr. Thompson was proposing, right?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say, Mr. Clanton, that many inmates in that J block were talking about Mr. Jensen in this case?
Probably who he talked to, yes. He only talked to a select few when he feel like talking to him.
And would you talk?
Excuse me?
No, I'm sorry I interrupted.
When he feel like talking to select few people, he'll go talk to him. But other than that, like people that come on the news, they'll try to, talk to him. He'll talk to him back. Then, he feel he got a friend there and they get to talking and things like that.
Everybody knew who he was, right?
I guess, yes.
And what his case was about?
I guess.
People would talk about it when it would be on the news?
Watch the news. Not Wisconsin news, no way. We was always watching like Channel 9 news, Channel 7, anything that was Illinois related. Because majority of everybody there was from Illinois.
And weren't there newspapers in the jail?
Yeah.
The Kenosha News?
Yes.
And people would talk about Mr. Jensen's case being in the news?
Nope, we wouldn't get the paper. He'd tear it out before we get the paper, whatever he had in there. Yeah, he was the only one getting the paper. And excuse me?
He would show it to people, right?
Not the papers, not his newspaper. After he get through reading his paper, he'll let you read the paper.
Okay, then people would read it.
Then people read it.
All right, that's all, thank you.
Mr. Clanton, you said there were a select few people that Mr. Jensen would talk to in the cell block when you were there?
Yes.
Who are the select few?
Mr. Bush.
That's Bernard Bush?
Yes, sir.
So would you say that he spoke to Bernard Bush more or less often than he spoke with David Thompson while David Thompson was in the cell?
Less.
So you talked to David Thompson most of all?
Yes.
Reading.
Sustained.
Okay.
And
Let's put it this way. And I don't want you to be influenced by my question as to the answer, but
objection.
I did just ask a question.
which inmate, while you were locked up in the same block with Mr. Jensen, which inmate did Mr. Jensen talk more to than any other inmate in that cell block?
Mr. Thompson.
Which inmate did Mr. Jensen speak with second most often besides David Thompson?
Mr. Bush.
And which inmate did Mr. Jensen speak to which inmates, if any, did Mr. Jensen speak to besides David Thompson and Bernard Bush?
Me.
Now, aside from those three persons, David Thompson and Bernard Bush and yourself, did you ever see Mr. Jensen talk to any other inmate in the facility?
No.
That was it?
That was it. Everybody that was there before. That block changed, like every couple of days. And the ones was there, we was the ones, Mr. Jensen, Bush, and myself, we was there the longest. And then new people started coming in.
Did you ever see Mr. Jensen speaking to the new people about his case?
Yes.
So he did speak to other inmates.
Yes, he did.
Was there any other inmate that he spoke to on a regular basis besides the 3 names that you've just mentioned?
I don't know their last names though, but yeah, it was a couple more.
Do you remember which cell number you were in while you were in that cell block?
1.
Do you remember what cell block Mark Jensen was in when he was in that cell block?
He was in cell block 2 at first when I first got there, and then they moved him to cell 6.
Do you remember what cell David Thompson was in?
4.
Do you remember what cell number Bernard Bush was in?
4.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Well, Mr. Clanton, basically you're saying he talked to a whole lot of people.
Yes.
New people, right? Yourself, Mr. Bush, Mr. Thompson, right?
Yes.
Bin Laden?
Yes.
Is that Mr. Otero?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you recall Mr. Campbell, who was there when you first arrived?
No.
But you wouldn't recall everybody's name from the time you were there? Would that be fair to say?
Pretty much. Somewhat.
I mean, you talked about new guys who'd come in or go. If somebody was there just the first week you were there, you may not remember that, right?
Right. Yes.
And I take it you didn't have a timer or anything to try to determine who Mark was talking to the most or what was going on, right?
Timer.
A timer.
No, timer.
And you noticed this because the whole time he was talking to people, you were thinking, what a fool, right?
Yeah, I was thinking worse than that though, but yes.
You
Yes.
thought it very foolish to share what he had with people, right?
Yes.
All right. Thanks.
Any question?
Well, since you were thinking, what were you thinking about?
Well, I object to, I mean, you can't have an open-ended speculative question in here.
Well, counsel asked you what you thought, and he asked you if you thought he was a fool, and you said you thought he was worse than that. What do you think?
Judge, and it's improper that he asked that a second time.
The objection's overruled. Well, I don't know how relevant it is what he thinks, though.
Well, what he's thinking is based on what Mr. Jensen said to him.
Well, the fact that it was unobjected to, if that's a word, unobjected to, then doesn't make it non-objectionable now. It's
seems
irrelevant
like-
what he was thinking.
Okay. No
So-
further questions then.
All right, you may step down.
Your Honor, our next witness is Rhonda Mitchell, and we need a short recess to get the technological assistance straightened out. We also need to confirm that she's here. She was supposed to be here by 10 o'clock today.
All right, we'll take a short break. Please don't talk about that.
All rise.
That kind of question will have us trying this thing twice. I mean, to ask him what he thinks, I mean, it's just begging for,
Well,
begging for an answer that says, I thought he killed his wife. And Mr. Jamboys knows it, and he's shooting for that, and I'll be moving for mistrial, and we'll be trying this thing twice. That's so improper, and when it happens, because it's not the first time he's tried, when it happens, we'll be back. And I'll send Mr. Jamboys a bill for my time.
Well, and I don't know what to do with that bill, Your Honor, but I will say this. The question that I put to this witness was not calculated to elicit that information. I specifically instructed this witness in that room back there to never, ever make reference to that conversation between him and Mr. Jensen. Mr. Clanton's defense attorney was back there when I made that specific instruction to him. That was not the purpose of that question. I was following up on the question that was put to the witness by Mr. Albee. Now, if Mr. Albee wants to open something up on cross-examination or recross-examination, he can expect that I'm going to follow up on my next direct. And the question that I posed to that witness was directly, immediately, and obviously attributable to the question. It was a follow-up to the question posed by Mr. Albee on cross.
He thought he was a fool based on his experience in the jails and his observations of Mr. Jensen. He had a basis to give that opinion. He's basically an expert in prison life. In terms of just asking him, when he volunteered, that's not all I was thinking. Well, I'm sort of stuck with that answer, but he's not allowed to follow up on whatever he wants to try to open up the door to some belief. And I'm just saying, and anytime in this case, if we get to that dangerous spot where he's going to elicit answers about what people think in this case, well,
Well, the objection was sustained, and so there's no harm done. But I do think that I think you're incorrect in assuming that this was calculated by the district attorney to draw a response that would have had the dramatic effect that you fear. And I didn't feel that it was likely to do that, but I sustained the objection for the reasons which I indicated, and so we'll leave it at that.
I didn't inquire what answer he thought he was going to get.
I don't want to get into it. I sustained the objection, and that's that. Period. We're done with this discussion. Start again as soon as Ms. Mitchell's in the room.